everyone, welcome to Inconvenient Truths. I'm your host, Jennifer Zheng. Netflix Squid Game has recently become a global hit. So many people have been watching and talking about it. Before I had a chance to watch it, someone sent me a long report from the Mirror titled Horrific Real-Life Squid Game Sees Thousands of Prisoners Harvested for Organs Alive. This story has a subheading that reads, Prisoners X-rayed at Horrific Concentration Camp. So the whole of this subtitle is about my experience and the interview with me. After reading this report, I felt very bad about being included in the report about Squid Game without watching it. So I worked overtime for 2 days to finish watching this 9-episode Korean survival drama. After watching it, of course, I have so much to say, and my thoughts were different from everyone else because, unlike everyone else, I'm not a bystander making some careless remarks. I have actually experienced a real-life Squid Game, and it is a much more brutal, gruesome, and a larger game that is still being played now. So today, as a survivor of a real-life Squid Game, I'd like to compare the TV drama with the real-life version of Squid Game that I experienced from the perspective of a game participant, not an onlooker, in the following aspect. In Squid Game, the horrific scene of a doctor and several game workers colluding to harvest the participants' organs and sell them was shown in a very realistic and vivid way. This scene immediately drew the attention of the mainstream media. In addition to the Mirror report that I mentioned above, the Daily Mail in Britain also publishing a long report titled, They'll Take Your Liver and You Won't Even Know, China's Real-Life Squid Game, how organs are harvested from thousands every week for a kill-to-order market, and why the world is powerless to stop it. Why is the world powerless to stop it? The report says it is because the World Health Organization is compelled to accept the totalitarian nation's inadequate and misleading hospital data without question. So this is pretty much like the situation with the CCP virus or the COVID-19, right? I think the reason why the killing and selling of organs is in Squid Game may have something to do with a Korean documentary called Kill to Live. This 50-minute investigative report was shot inside China by a Korean journalist who risked his life to do some on-the-ground research, providing strong evidence that the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, has been killing people and selling their organs. The documentary caused quite some attention when it was broadcast in 2017. So I think the scriptwriter of Squid Game was probably inspired by this documentary and other reports and wrote the story of live organ harvesting into the script, as we all say that art comes from life. However, the real-life version of live organ harvesting is much more brutal and gruesome compared to Squid Game, and it is still being done today. Imagine if the live organ harvesting in Squid Game had not been done secretly by a participating doctor and a few staff members, but on a large scale and righteously by the organizer of the game. If that is the case, the main use of the 456 participants in the game might not be for entertainment, but for killing and selling for money. In fact, this is exactly how the CCP's system of live organ harvesting works. In April 2000, I was arrested for the fourth time in Beijing for practicing Falun Gong, a peaceful meditation and self-improvement system that has been under persecution for more than 22 years in China. On June 1st, 2000, on the way from Beijing Chongwen District Detention Center to the labor camp, I was taken to a clinic with several other people in the same police van for a physical examination. The doctor carefully examined our 5 sense organs, peeled our eyelids, and examined our eyeballs, and made us lie on the bed, carefully feeling our internal organs, listening to our heartbeats, etc., and asking our medical history. I thought that was a routine checkup and didn't think much of it, but I honestly told the doctor that I had hepatitis before practicing Falun Gong and more than once. I had contracted hepatitis C during a blood transfusion after giving birth. I told him about this because I wanted him to know that practicing Falun Gong is good for health, and it was wrong for the CCP to persecute us. I saw that the doctor carefully wrote down everything I said, but I really didn't think about anything else at that time. One day, about a month after we were sent to the labor camp, a big bus suddenly arrived, and all the windows of the bus were blocked with closed curtains, and we were told to urgently gather in front of the bus. Every 2 of us were handcuffed with 1 pair of handcuffs and pushed onto the bus. There were not enough seats for all of us, so the extra people were ordered to squat in the aisle or in the little space between the 2 rows of seats. Imagine this scene. It was exactly like a horror movie. We did not know where we were being taken and for what purpose. The police were heavily armed. The curtains were closed tightly. We couldn't see anything outside of the bus. We were told to keep our heads down and bury them in the lap of the person sitting in the seats, and to put our uncuffed hands behind our heads like this. The bus was moving forward like a black box, and there was so little air inside it. I squatted in the gap between the 2 rows of seats with my head down and my sweat soaked through my clothes. When we arrived at the place, we realized that we had been pulled for a medical checkup at a former hospital much larger than the last clinic, where there was an X-ray machine, and all of us were X-rayed. After another month or so, we were called to a small clinic inside the labor camp in groups and had our blood drawn 1 by 1. The purpose of all these medical examinations was to know our blood types and physical conditions, and the data was stored in the computer. When someone needs organs and can afford to buy them, the CCP's doctors and transplant hospitals can search from that database to find a match, and then that match is killed so that his or her organs can be sold for money. This is not a horror movie. This is a real industry in China with astronomical profits. And I myself was subjected to 3 physical examinations for that purpose. However, the physical examinations happened in 2000. At that time, I did not know about this live organ harvesting crime, nor did I know the purpose of these repeated medical examinations. So I did not fear those examinations particularly, nor did I think that these things were important. That is why when I wrote my memoir about the labor camp, these are the book covers of my memoir in English and Chinese. When I wrote my memoir, I did not mention these medical examinations at all. If I had known the purpose of this experience at that time, I don't know how I would have felt when I was pulled around in that black box. Later, after I found out about the organ harvesting, I thought back to my experience and realized that I might have saved my life by telling the doctor that I had hepatitis twice. Having hepatitis makes you a waste product from the perspective of organ transplantation, right? Whether or not my life was saved because of this, I really don't know. There is another episode in Squid Game that impressed me a lot. That is, after participating in the first game, everyone found out that it was actually a killing game and people were killed instantly if they lost the game. So everyone was so scared. Then, after a democratic vote, they decided to end the game. After the game was over, the main character Shin Gi-hun, this is him, went to the police station to report that the game had killed more than 200 people and the police should rush to investigate and arrest people to stop the killing. But he was driven out as a psychopath. No one believed what he said. It was too unbelievable. I remember that shortly after the crime of harvesting organs from Falun Gong practitioners was first exposed by the Chinese edition of the Epoch Times in 2006, I told people about it, and people would not believe me and asked me for evidence. At that time, I felt the same way as Qin Ki-hun. It seemed Shen Ki-hun, sorry, I don't know how to spell his name in English. It felt like when I went to the police station to report the crime, the police asked me for evidence. But when I couldn't produce any, they didn't open the case, didn't look for the missing person, and even ridiculed me or said that I was lying, slandering socialism, slandering the new China, and so on. At that time, I said, as a group of victims, how can we produce evidence? How can we have evidence when people have been killed? When someone who knows something comes forward, you say that it is not evidence. We don't have a dictative or agency. We don't have a search warrant. We don't have a gun, and we can't break into the places where people are kept. So how can we get evidence? But this absurdity is still happening today, and those who ask us for evidence never consider the ridiculousness of this logic. In fact, after more than 10 years of hard work, there is already a lot of evidence, some of which has been certified by the independent China Tribunal in the UK. And as well as the 9 UN special rapporteurs, the China Tribunal has ruled that the crimes have been proved beyond a reasonable doubt. Unfortunately, many people's mentality is, as long as my family has not been killed, then this matter has nothing to do with me. So they even don't bother to get themselves informed about this matter. There is another game in Squid Game which is also very impressive. That is, after the tug of war team competition of 10 people in each group, the participants are asked to form a group of 2 people, and everyone looks for the one who is close to them or who they believe can form the strongest team with them. But it turns out that the game is for the 2 people to become rivals, to kill each other, and only one of the 2 people can survive. This reminds me of the schooling system in the CCP's labor camps. This system ensures that the prisoners inside the camp will fight over one another and work themselves to death for the CCP. How does this system work? It works like this. Each prisoner is given a score every day, and those who do more work, those who listen to the police, those who report on others to the police, and so on, will get extra points. In the meantime, those who fail to complete the labor task, who are disobedient, and who violate the labor camp regulations, etc., will be deducted points. When I was in the labor camp, the most important concerns of the prisoners was their own points every day. The labor camp would regularly compare the scores of all prisoners, and the ones with the highest scores would get their labor camp terms reduced, while the ones with the lowest scores would have their terms extended. Since the reduction and the increase of terms are based on points, and the point is a relative concept, that is, if you want to reduce your terms the most, your points must be at the top of the list. In this way, the CCP does not have to employ more police force to hold an electric baton on the side to watch over the prisoners. Everyone will willingly take the initiative to work hard, monitor others, and report to the police, and so on, because everyone wants to get more points than others. In this way, it is ensured that the prisoners will definitely crush one another and compete with one another. In other words, the CCP uses this schooling system to mobilize the evil side in human nature to do evil to one another, thus to turn everyone into willingly slaves to the CCP. However, for Falun Gong practitioners, the standards are different. The most important thing for them is to renounce their faith. If they do not denounce their beliefs, they are not even eligible to participate in the schooling process and are always under strict control and subjected to all sorts of torture. Another absurd and ironic episode in Squid Game is that the organizers actually said that they wanted to ensure that everyone was equal. So those who broke the equality of the game, including the doctor who harvested the organs of the participants, were all executed. The CCP's labor camps were just the opposite. They divided people into different classes. People of different discipline levels were given different colored badges. So this is the badge of mine from the Beijing female labor camp. The top line is my name. The middle line is to which squad I belonged to. It's squad 2, by the way. The bottom line reads discipline level, general control. It is orange in color. The badge of the strict control team was white. I wore a white badge and was under strict control for a long time in the labor camp. The price I paid to get this orange general control badge is unbelievable. And I don't have time to go into details here. If you are interested, you can get a copy of my memoir and read it. It is such a long story. I hope someday it can be turned into a movie. If you know any movie makers, please recommend my story to them. The other day, when I was interviewed by young Americans against socialism, I talked about the sleep deprivation in the labor camp and how I witnessed the moment when a young woman was driven into insanity after being kept awake for 5 days and 4 nights. The host couldn't understand why the CCP would do such a thing to people. She asked me, after these people were driven into insanity, they couldn't make any contribution to their communities after they were released. Why would the CCP do that? She couldn't understand it at all. And I recommended her to read these two books, 9 Commentaries on the Chinese Communist Party and How the Spectre of Communism is Ruling Our World. And I said to her, the police officers in the labor camp only cared about whether or not the hard reform rate target for converting Falun Gong practitioners could be accomplished, whether or not they could keep their jobs and bonuses, etc. They wouldn't care less about whether those Falun Gong practitioners could still contribute to society after they returned home. That was not their concern whatsoever. In addition, the Communist Party is an evil specter that exists in another dimension, and it manipulates and directs people with bad thoughts in this dimension to do evil things for it. The ultimate goal of communism, or the original heart, as the communist leaders call it, is to destroy mankind, not to make human society better. Therefore, if you try to understand the CCP with the mindset of ordinary human beings, the mindset of ordinary governments that want to make society better, you simply cannot understand it at all. Finally, I would like to say that Squid Game is indeed a very good TV drama. Its scripting is very compact and gripping, and each episode ends at a most heart-wrenching moment, making people want to watch the next episode right away. It reveals the agonies of human nature in order to survive in a life and death environment where one cannot help oneself. And these agonies are presented in a very straightforward and compelling way in front of the audience in a bloody manner. Some people say that this drama is a satire of the society, of the social reality of the CCP's China. I basically agree with this statement. In the last game, when only 2 people left were fighting to the death, it suddenly started to rain, and then someone among the VIPs who were watching the game from the shadows suddenly recited a poem in Chinese, 好雨知时节, which can be translated as good rain is coming to our delight, meaning that the rain came at the right time to make the fight more difficult and therefore more enjoyable for the VIPs who were watching. The Chinese-speaking VIP is, of course, from China. Some other people say that Squid Game is a reflection of the human race in the end time and is rich in philosophical reflections. I basically agree with this too. In my opinion, the darkness in the CCP's labor camps is far worse. When the rules of the game are set by evil people who take pleasure in making people kill one another and watching people kill one another, people who are at the bottom of the society who can only play the game with their lives, where it's really hard to make any different choices. They can only kill others so that they can survive. Sometimes they can't survive even after they kill others. The best thing they can do is to die together with others. Squid Game's bloody visual impact, I think, also represents the script writer and director's view and perception of the real world. If the reality is just like what is shown in Squid Game, so no one should blame them for making the visuals so cruel and bloody. However, in this end of the world time, is there really no hope? There are 2 things in Squid Game that shocked me the most. One is that in the final duel, when the main character could have taken all the 45.6 billion in prize money by killing his opponent, who was already lying on the ground and unable to fight back, he chose to stop the game and gave up the prize money and not to kill his opponent. Another point is that at the end of the drama, the main character can obviously take the prize money and fly away to be reunited with his daughter, but he turns around and walks towards the audience, and then the whole play ends abruptly there. But everyone in the audience understands that this means the main character wants to go back to stop this killing game from continuing. That is to say, this cruel game is not impossible to stop or to be reversed. As a matter of fact, from the very beginning, at any time, as long as more than half of the participants are willing to stop, it can be stopped. However, most of the time, most ordinary people can't control their own hearts, can't control their own desires, and eventually go further and further down the wrong path until they lose their lives. When watching the drama, I was very, very involved, and often I would think to myself, if it were me, what could I do in that situation? Finally, I figured out. Why should I participate in this evil game at all? Why should I let them make the rules? If you can control your own heart, restrain your own desires, and stay away from this evil game from the very beginning, those VIPs are not capable of manipulating these little guys at all. Oh, to put it another way, everything in the drama is just about money, right? If one can understand that one's destiny and how much money one can have in one's life doesn't depend on how greedy one is, one can be completely above all the ugly games in the world. I think this TV drama with such a strong sense of reality will certainly cause many viewers to think. The result of my own thinking is, in fact, whether we are big guys or small guys in this world, if we can start from our own hearts, we can not only save ourselves, but also save others and the world. Well, that's all for today. Thank you very much for watching. Please do spread my videos if you like them. Thank you. See you soon.